All right. So this one is just a little late. Um, but last Friday, I actually went to go see Friendship, written and directed by Andrew DeYoung and starring Tim Robinson and Paul Rudd, as well as Kate Mara. Now, I didn't really know much about this movie other than the first trailer that I saw, which sparked a little bit of interest. Honestly, social relationships and social dynamics has always been tricky for me. So the idea of a socially awkward guy trying to make friends was really intriguing to me. And this movie is partially that, but a lot more. But what is this movie exactly, without getting too much into details? Because I actually do believe you should go and see this movie not knowing a damn thing. Because the trailer only gave a little bit away of what the story's about, but it's so much bigger and so much grander than that initial concept. But essentially, here is the best synopsis that I can give. A married man with a socially awkward dynamic befriends the new neighbor that played by Paul Rudd and believes that he is engaging in a new and exciting friendship. Unfortunately, due to an event that unfolds, Paul Rudd decides to cut ties with Tim Robinson's character, and thus shenanigans ensue. Now, this movie has a lot of cringe humor, something similar to The Office, where a lot of the humor from the movie comes from the awkward dynamics and social aspects of these characters. Now, that's not really my thing. I'm going to be honest. So I did not find this movie as funny as everyone else. That being said, this movie is still pretty fucking funny. It really is. And if you love that humor, if you love Tim Robinson just as a comedian, you're going to love this movie. But you're also going to love this movie if you're a fan of extraordinarily sharp character work and intriguing studies. Extreme. Look at me trying to talk, and I can't seem to find my own words. But this movie has sharp writing, is a great character study, and delves deep into social dynamics, the likes of which I don't think I've seen a movie do in a while. And overall, this movie manages to balance a very fine line between deeply funny and deeply unsettling. This is a black comedy by every measure and definition of the term. And I say that overall, I would give it probably an 8 or a 9 out of 10. It is really, really good. Even if you're not a fan of the comedy like me, you are still going to find something to like. And you are still going to find something to be fearful of because, there are scenes that I interpreted as deeply terrifying. Meanwhile, my friends were laughing their asses off. There's ways to interpret certain scenes because what makes this movie so interesting is that this is essentially a feature-length episode of I Think You Should Leave. And I mean that in the most genuine, nicest way possible. I really do. A lot of the comedy comes from Tim Robinson doing Tim Robinson things while everyone else just acts like a normal person. And it works for the most part. There is one real downside to this movie, and that is Kate Mara and Jackie Dillon Glazer, whatever his name is. Their characters, because you see how Tim Robinson's character acts, and it really does make you wonder how he managed to, have a family alongside this, which, it really doesn't make much sense at times. And, there is a bigger theme that kind of ties in with their characters, but, this whole world is played straight. Meanwhile, Tim Robinson is not. So you're left wondering why their characters are there. How does he marry? How is he married? How does he have kids? It's one of those things where it just doesn't make sense the more you think about it. It doesn't necessarily bring the movie down, but it does make you think like, how on earth does this happen? How on earth does a guy like Tim Robinson manage to bag Kate Mara and then have kids with her? It makes no sense. And that is really the only downside of this movie. It does, like, the ending is going to be, I love the ending. I love the ending. But I can see why people won't. So, for me, I'm probably going to give it I am probably going to give it an 8. My friends probably give it a 9 or a 10. For me personally, it's the way I felt about The Hangover. I did not find that movie funny. I didn't find a single thing about that movie funny, but I loved the story and I loved the characters, and everything about it was so deeply intriguing that I couldn't help but get invested into the overall narrative. And the same thing goes here. I may not find this movie necessarily funny the way other people found it funny, but I just could not help but be invested with these characters and figure out where the story was going to go, because there are twists and turns. I mean, literally, this is a comedy who, I guess the closest thing I can say is it's a mix of Judd Apatow, I Think You Should Leave by Tim Robinson, and then, something like Fargo, which is, yes, technically a comedy, but it's a dark comedy, a black comedy even. So, I do believe you should go out and see this movie. It does actually deal with those deep thoughts that I think a lot of men have thought about before. Those anxieties and those deep, fearful social interactions that we don't necessarily talk about because they're just not things that are normally brought up. And this movie does tackle it. It's sharply written, greatly directed, and amazingly acted. So I believe, Friendship is something that is damn worth seeing, and I advise all of you to go ASAP.